Memories are very interesting, and it's interesting what triggers them sometimes. So, just a few minutes ago, I was thinking about how critics can sometimes be your best advertisement. And I'm seeing that in some of the ads for this particular political campaign that's going on right now in 2024 between Kamala and Trump. And it made me think about myself. When I was teaching ninth grade, I believe it was, so this was years and years ago before uh, the school district nearest to me had a ninth grade center, when the ninth grade was part of the high school. There was a student who was upset with me and offended with me, and he decided to go talk to the our curriculum principal and just tell her what a bad job I was doing. And what he said to her was that I didn't know how to teach because he didn't like the fact that we would come into class, we would do a little bit of reading, we would talk about what we read, then they would have to write sometimes about what they read, then we would talk about the vocabulary and grammar in the things that we had read or things related to what we were reading. And there was no way that I could be a good teacher and we could do all of those different activities on a regular basis, because I should have been devoting one period to reading and one period to vocabulary and one period to grammar and one period to whatever else he thought it was. And there's no way that I should have been, weaving all these things together in maybe, 10 or 15 minute, I think we had hour classes back then. So about, 10-minute activities where they were going from, one to the other and talking about how things connected. And, and she brought me into her office and she said, I just had the most interesting conversation with a student that I think I've ever had in my life. And it just made me really want to praise you for your teaching, because he doesn't understand and has been through his whole career of school up until ninth grade, thinking that these were all separate things. And the fact that you are showing the connection between them is so strange to him that he thinks you don't know how to teach. But they are all connected and they all do build off of each other and go together. And, had he been open-minded enough to experience something different, he would have realized how rich English is and how rich language is and how all these things interplay. And she was like, so she's like, I had a high opinion of you before you came in to my office, but I have a higher opinion of you now. And I wonder what in the heck were all his teachers doing before, that they literally were spending an hour on reading or an hour on writing and didn't talk about grammar, didn't talk about vocabulary, didn't talk about any of these other things ever, and just did one thing per period. And so I think about that sometimes. And I also think about how people only understand from the level of their understanding. So sometimes people criticize what they don't understand simply because they don't understand it, and simply because they don't want to step out of their comfort zone to consider a different way of doing things or seeing things, or, a different perspective. And so sometimes your critics are your best advertisement, because what they criticize shows the difference between them and you. It shows the difference between what they've experienced and what you offer. And sometimes I see this when men make posts about women and they are criticizing a woman's standards, or they're criticizing her mentality or her intelligence or her ambition or whatever those things are, because standards are a good thing. Ambition is a good thing. Intelligence is a good thing. Now, of course, anything can be abused or distorted and become possibly problematic. But just to have these things is not a problem. And they would be probably seen by someone else as a benefit, as an asset. But to someone who is not used to them, it becomes well, why can't you be satisfied with? Or why do you need all of that? Why aren't you content? And it's because their standards, their worldview, their horizon is much lower than the woman that they're trying to pursue or the woman that they have encountered. And so, once again, sometimes your critics shine a light on you to show the distinction between who you are and who they are in such a clear way that it's like, wow, well, thanks. Because you just portrayed me better than I ever could have portrayed myself. You didn't mean to put a feather in my cap. You didn't mean to toot my own horn. I'm sorry, toot my horn, but you did. Because you talked about my assets in a way that showed that it was beyond your grasp. It was beyond your mindset or your capability to handle. And so, like I said, it's funny when I see that happening in this particular election cycle. And I see it happen on social media as well. And I just find it interesting, and I just love that sometimes people just do our work for us. We can just sit back and listen and say, hey, they said it all. I don't even have anything to add.